planning legal action against Home Secretary Priti Patel in an attempt to restore his British passport, which was taken from him 8 years ago following 2 trips to Syria. Moazzam first made headlines when he was released from Belmarsh prison after 7 terrorism-related charges against him connected to the conflict in Syria were dropped. He's since become a campaigner for what he says have been injustices in the war on terror. He joins me now. Moazzam, welcome to the programme. Your application for a new passport was briefly accepted and then rejected in September 2021. What was the reasoning given?
Well, it was a really bizarre letter. First of all, I got my passport back after having had it revoked for 8 years. And the letter that I received, it said 2 things. One was that it has been issued in error and your passport is still revoked. But it had been addressed, the letter had been addressed to somebody who lives in the north of England, dated 2017. And when I searched the name of the person who it was addressed to, I found that that person had been convicted of all things for passport fraud. So this seems to have been a knee-jerk reaction, a cut-and-paste job. But also, my sense is that this is incompetence and vindictiveness based upon 20 years of targeting me, first in Guantanamo with British intelligence complicity, and then afterwards the attempted and failed prosecutions that you've just mentioned.
A Home Office spokesperson has told us it would be inappropriate to comment on this case while the department considers its response to the pre-action protocol letter received from Mr. Begg's legal representatives. Do you find yourself slightly incredulous at the way in which the justice system has treated you through these past 20 years? You know, first of all, incarceration in Guantanamo with no charge at all, and then the withdrawal of charges against you once evidence was found that suggested that the case would not have been able to go forward.
Yes, I mean, if I look at 20 years, the past 20 years, I've been held in 3 military detention camps. I've been subject to torture, cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment. I've been arrested 3 different times in connection to that by counter-terrorism police. And I've had my passport revoked 3 times. I've never been convicted of anything. I've never had a day in court. And I've actually been declared innocent by the very same authority, the West Midlands Police, that arrested me back in 2014. So it doesn't make any sense what the government is trying to do. It doesn't make any sense that they give me a passport, then within weeks they revoke it and say, you don't just issue passports in error after we've got on record that they've said we've got 2.5 years, a period over which they say they are making checks, and then only to say that it's been issued in error. There's something deeply incompetent at best. And as I said, vindictive as at worst, at play with the government.
You were first arrested in February 2002 in Pakistan and handed to US forces, detained at Bagram before being moved to Guantanamo Bay. You were released without charge in 2005, so that's 3 years later, but trips to Syria in 2012 and 2013 resulted in the stripping of your passport and eventual arrest. What was the relevance to your arrest of your trips to Syria? Why did you go to Syria?
Yeah, that's really good, because one of the things that happened to me, again, people will find this hard to believe, but when I was held in Bagram, which is a detention facility in Afghanistan run by the US, I was interrogated there by MI5 agents, some of whom I'd known because they visited me in my house prior to me being detained in Bagram and Guantanamo. So I was threatened by CIA and FBI agents with MI5 present, that if I didn't cooperate, I would be sent to Syria or to Egypt to be tortured. So, of course, I learned very early on that British and the American governments had been involved with and were working alongside the Assad regime and the Gaddafi regime in the renditions program. This is absolutely, it's well documented now. So I wanted to, when I went across, it wasn't just to Syria, I went to Libya, to Tunisia, to Egypt, to meet with people who had been these rendition victims, who'd been handed over by British or American CIA agents. In fact, one group of people that I met included Abdul Hakim Bilhaj, who's been so far the only prisoner that's received an apology, and he got it from Theresa May in 2018, for Britain's role in his false rendition and kidnap, as well as that of his wife.
But do you understand why the authorities might have felt during the period that we were living through that there was a danger of you being involved in terrorism or extremism. I mean, is there a sense with you that they have any justification for that?
Well, we're a country of laws. We're a country of the rule of law. We're a country of presumption of innocence. We're a country of innocence and culpability. We're a country of all of those things. But
you can carry on answering it. You're saying we're a country of law,
yes.
of the presumption of innocence, before
Yes.
until proven guilty, and so on. Do you think that all of that was lost to us? That secure sense of how the justice system worked because of the instability created by the war on terror?
Well, I understand that there was a need to respond to what happened on 9/11 and the war on terror that launched as a result of that. But really, all of my investigations have brought me to this point that I've found that our government and the government of the United States of America seem to be above the law. I have sat down with members of the Metropolitan Police, given evidence to them in an investigation they have mounted of MI5 agents who were involved in and complicit in the torture of their own citizens of Britain, of whom I'm one. And I think all of this and the judge-led inquiry that was ordered by David Cameron as a result of the settlement case that we had with MI5, all of this has shown that there is a legal process. There are legal processes where people can be held accountable. But unfortunately, it seems to me, in my experience, that the government not only is above that, but has been on a campaign to disrupt my life for the past 20 years, because these are the most prominent things I've been doing for the past 15 years. And it seems that I am in the government's crosshairs because of that.
Yeah, I mean, Guantanamo is not a symbol for anyone, really, of justice in any shape or form, I know. But why do you think that you've been targeted? Why do you think there may be forces operating on the basis of vindictiveness towards you?
My sense, again, is, and it's really important your viewers understand this, I saw people beaten to death, tortured to death in front of me in Bagram. This was a place where MI5 agents were regularly visiting. It's a place where I told them that I saw this was happening. Whatever it was that took me to Bagram and Guantanamo in U.S. custody, of which I believe was dodgy, false evidence that was presented by MI5 to begin with, I certainly didn't deserve, and I don't think anybody did, the treatment that was meted out to me. If I've committed a crime, then we are a country that is able to and has prosecuted many terrorists throughout history, whether it's Irish Republican or far-right or indeed Muslim terrorists. So it's not for lack of the ability to do so, but to act outside of the law and to be involved in the torture of people and the rendition of false imprisonment. That in itself is a crime, and the government has got away with it.
Obviously, we don't have anyone to speak to that with us. We just have you. But tell me what your next steps are and how a judicial review would work.
So the way this is, we've written a letter to the Home Office and to the Passport Office, essentially giving them pre-warning that we will be issuing court proceedings, a judicial review, which essentially will seek to have the reasons why my passport has been withheld uncovered, and will ask for it to be returned. We are hoping that the government will see reason and will reissue my passport without question and without any more incompetence. But if they don't, then we are preparing for a court battle.
And just tell me, Moazzam, how would your life change if you got your British passport back? It might sound like a naive question, but I'm just wondering particularly what it means to you.
Well, one of the things I couldn't do, the first of my children got married, and I couldn't attend her wedding because it was in Turkey. And I had told her actually the week that I'd received my passport that I'm coming now because I've finally got my passport. But within weeks, of course, I couldn't do that, so I had to cancel all the party celebrations and the arrangements. Of course, my investigation work. My work, I've traveled around the world. I've given evidence at war crimes tribunals. I've met with presidents and prime ministers around the world. I've met with politicians who've accepted and understood that Guantanamo is a terrible place, that the prisoners there need to be resettled because if they go back to their homes of origin, they may be subjected to torture. So I've been involved in that and much more. And for the past 8 years, all of that has been stopped because of this inability to travel.
Just finally, you've mentioned Guantanamo, where you were detained. Rather unbelievably, it's still open. It turns 20 this year. Do you hope that Joe Biden will be the US president who finally closes it?
It is my hope, indeed. There's 39 prisoners still there, and it's important to remember that Guantanamo is a bipartisan US project. There are both Republican and Democrat presidents who have overseen its running. We've found that there's a kind of bipolar approach to it, that Obama said he'll close it, signed an executive order to do so. Trump reversed that and signed an executive order to keep it open. It really doesn't matter whether you keep it open or closed. The importance is the prisoners, the human beings that are there held without charge or trial for the most part. There are, I think, about more than a quarter or a third, rather, who have actually been cleared for release. Now, cleared for release doesn't mean that you will be sent home. There's one prisoner that's been cleared for release. He's been there for 10 years longer than he should have been. But the hope is that Biden will do what the other predecessors couldn't do. And it's much easier for him to do so because he's negotiated with the very Taliban leaders the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan, who were held with us in Afghanistan and are now ministers in their government. And there are only 39 prisoners for him to negotiate the release of, which is an easier task than the 779 who held there at the highest point.
Moazzam Begg, thank you so much for joining me. And as mentioned, we did reach out to the Home Office and Her Majesty's Passport Office, who told us it would be inappropriate for them to comment on this case at this time. Now, joining me